Meet today's guest, Amit Grinvald, a global citizen and master communicator. Originally from Israel, he's lived and studied in China, Thailand, the UK, and the Czech Republic, and now calls Marbella home. Amit began in venture capital but found his purpose in communication. Today, he's a TEDx organizer, public speaking coach, and trainer to global teams, Fortune 500 leaders, TEDx speakers, and even Olympic medalists. His mission? Helping people connect through clear, powerful communication. Sounds interesting? Then keep watching.
But, now I work sometimes with data leaders or tech leaders who have to explain, numbers and data, even, engineers at Microsoft that I've worked with.
But how did you learn that, or where did you get the experience?
Yeah, for me it was really...
And you are organizing things now already in Marbella.
Yeah, so I like a new venture that I got into with three other partners. We're organizing a 5-day summit/retreat for entrepreneurs. So we're going to bring, over 400 entrepreneurs and scale up leaders and speakers from around Europe and the world to Marbella in November.
So hello everyone, here we are in the beautiful Sandan shop, and my guest today is Amit. Did I say your name right?
Yes.
Or
yes.
Amit?
Yeah, Amit.
Amit.
Yeah, both.
Good.
I'm kind of used to both, but so anyway.
Because my name is the same 4 letters, and people don't know where to put the emphasis. So welcome and thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and you are actually a guest that I stumbled upon on LinkedIn, and I loved your profile and I loved what you're doing. So I'm really excited that you're here, and I really want you to share the story of what you do today with my viewers. And let's just crack on.
Yeah, perfect. LinkedIn is where I spend most of my time these days, so I'm not surprised that's where you found me.
Yeah, but because also now you're more active in Marbella and you're doing some events. So yeah, I guess you're doing a good job. Because you reached me as well.
Yeah, I try. Marbella is there's an exciting shift happening here, so I'm happy to play an active part in it.
Yeah. So tell the viewers a little bit about yourself. Like, where are you from? I know you have a very, very interesting childhood.
Yeah.
So just give us a brief overview.
Yeah, it's a little complicated, so I'll try to keep it.
But we like complicated.
Yeah, keep it as simple as possible. My mom is Romanian, my dad is Dutch Israeli. I was born in Israel, but grew up in Southeast Asia, in Thailand for a few years, where I went to boarding school for my middle school years. And then in China, where my parents were living there for, I think, around 20 years in total.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, but it was amazing. And then after finishing high school in China, I decided to move to Europe for university. So I went to the UK, where I did my first semester of my bachelor's studies, and then continued and finished that in Prague in the Czech Republic. Then I moved to Vienna to do my master's there, and then moved back to Prague somewhat unexpectedly for a few more years. So I spent just under 10 years total in Prague before I moved to Marbella 2.5 years ago. So yeah, Spain is my 7th country that I live in so far. Or let's see, maybe it's the final destination, who knows?
Yeah, who knows? But what an interesting background you have. Already you're a mix of so many interesting nationalities and cultures, and then you get to experience it when you're a young adolescent to live in Asia, which is so different as well than China. I haven't been to China, so I don't even have a clue, what's it like to go to school there and everything. But and here you are in Marbella. So what is it that you do right now?
Yes, I started my career in VCs and startups and that kind of world. That was very exciting to me coming out of business school. And at the same time, I was also involved with TED as a TEDx organizer. So I've been organizing a TEDx event in Prague for about 10 years now. And recently, in the last 2 years, I moved kind of more into the communication side of things. So now I work as a communication trainer and public speaking coach, working either one-on-one with business leaders who get invited to speak at conferences, or just on more general communication skills at work, as well as holding some workshops and trainings for organizations from Fortune 500 companies to smaller branding and real estate agencies. So it's really about kind of bridging the gap between my experience on the business and management side of things, and the kind of communication and community building, which is like a passion that I've cultivated for so long, even though it wasn't kind of strictly my, you know, professional path to begin with. It was kind of a passion project on the side. But I was kind of pushed to do more work in that area, and so that's where I occupy most of my time.
But who did you want to become when you were small? What was like
I
of a
yeah, I mean
six-year-old?
when I was a kid, I actually wanted to be a horse riding trainer. I started riding when I was 6 or 7, and it was, you know, my biggest passion when I was a kid, and I didn't even dream of becoming, you know, like a competitive rider. Because I loved my instructor so much when I was a kid. I just wanted to like do what she's doing. So, you know, my kind of a dream when I was a kid was to be a riding instructor. So yeah, so that was kind of my dream when I was a kid. Obviously, that didn't really pan out. And in high school, I kind of thought I wanted to be a hotel manager because I loved kind of like the community aspect of like hotels, and I loved staying in hotels. So I was like, oh, it'd be great to like live where you work in a hotel. So I thought I wanted to be that. And obviously I don't do that. So I don't know, I was always a really curious kid. So I kind of like changed, you know, dreams and paths
which is
quite
normal,
often.
which is normal. And I agree, like I went to study English because I loved my teacher. So I think the teachers are so important.
Yeah.
Like maybe I would have loved math if I had a very good teacher in the math. So like you said, you love the teacher. So I think the teachers, they don't even realize how big of an impact actually they have on our lives.
And that's part of like why I went to study business, because in high school, my favorite teacher was my economics teacher, and she just made economics so interesting that initially I thought I was going to go study economics, but then I decided to be a little more like general. So I did a double degree in business management and economics. And yeah, it was because of that, you know, because I just loved economics so much.
But was it that exciting in the university, or did you realize then it was like, oh, this is not as cool as my teacher made it look?
Yeah, I mean, I was always kind of a nerd, so I loved school and university for like the learning aspect of it and the social aspects as well. Yeah, economics, I had a different opinion of my economics professor at university. So my love for economics at university wasn't quite as strong as it was in my high school years. But there were so many other, you know, classes I really enjoyed, and I still love that like real world kind of application of theory that kind of makes economics like exciting to me. So it was about like bridging all that theory with things and stories that like really happen, and that's what I found really exciting about it.
But then how did you move from that economical side to the public speaking coach kind of job? This is such a also, I mean, they're not different words, because as you say, you do have to do presentations, you do have to have a good presence, but how did that move come about?
Yeah, I think reflecting back, you know, in high school, in the high school that I went to, I did the IB program, which some people might be familiar with. And in your last year, you have to choose kind of any subject you want to write a long essay about. And I chose economics as my topic. And at the time, you know, I was living in China, and I decided to write about hyperinflation in Zimbabwe, of all places. And what I really loved about economics, and what like made me fall in love with it in high school, is the theory it provides to then explain essentially stories, you know, of like what was happening in Zimbabwe with hyperinflation at the time, and how it really affected like people's life, but talking about it in like a pragmatic kind of structured way. So at the time, I didn't really see that that's where it was going, but you know, now I work sometimes with data leaders or tech leaders who have to explain, you know, numbers and data, even, you know, engineers at Microsoft that I've worked with. And it's how can they make that traditionally maybe boring topic interesting through storytelling. And that's where communication comes into that. Because regardless of what field you are, communication is the backbone of everything that we do. So to not bring those elements of connection and storytelling into it, I think is a missed opportunity. So that's where I really kind of come in with like with the coaching and training that I provide.
But how did you learn that, or where did you get the experience?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was really, I've always been a curious kid, so I've always loved stories of people and, you know, and reading and books, both like fiction and nonfiction. And then I started doing work as a TEDx organizer, and I started working with all these incredible people from all different backgrounds, from, you know, Olympic medalists that I had looked up to for years, to aerospace engineers, to, you know, Fortune 500 leaders and executives. And that work of working with all these really interesting people from different backgrounds just highlighted the importance of stories and how interesting that can really be when you like dive deep into someone's experience, and how that dictates a lot of what they do and how they bring those values into their work or in their personal life. So it was really through TED and TEDx, which I had been a fan of before I started organizing TEDx events, that really like highlighted communication to me in a really interesting way. And because I don't consider myself a particularly creative person, I think I'm more structured and logical in the way that I think about things, which is why I loved economics so much, for example. I think the challenge of bringing structure into storytelling, which could be thought of as a more creative skill, which I don't necessarily think that it is something that I found so interesting. And now being able to provide, you know, practical approaches and frameworks to different people and organizations to incorporate those elements of storytelling in a, you know, structured, practical way through different frameworks and tools. To me, that's kind of where I like bridge the gap between, you know, storytelling and communication, and, you know, the business and the analytics behind the work when I work with those kinds of people.
But can you give, like, let's say, our viewers and me maybe some practical tip that I can do today to kind of be a better public speaker?
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to like speeches specifically or keynotes, one of the first tips I always give is to not start with your name, which is what most people do. So when I work with someone preparing for a speech, whether it's at a conference or like a big presentation at work or whatever it might be, the first question that I ask is, how do you plan to start it? And 9 out of 10 times, if not even 9.5 out of 10 times, it's with, you know, my name is Amit and I'm here to talk to you about communication. And the truth is, you know, people aren't going to listen to what you have to say unless you give them a reason to. So those first few seconds is your most important real estate, because that's when you
Catch
like give them a reason to listen to you. So, and starting with your name is often not really the trick. It's safe, it's polite, everyone else does it, but that's exactly why you shouldn't do it, because the easiest way to stand out is to do what no one else is doing. And then another tip that I dove deeper recently. I had a conversation with David Biello, who's a curator at TED conferences, and we're talking about what makes a great story great. And it was really down to specificity, like how specific you are with the stories that you tell. And this is applicable not just in speeches, but in all kinds of conversations. I think we often think that in order to reach more people, we need to be more generic in the way that we describe things, but it's actually the opposite. The more specific you are with your story, the more believable it is, the more other people think it could be their story too. So if you're talking about real estate agents, for example, if they're, you know, showing a property, instead of listing the feature of a private pool with a sea view, if they talk about it in the sense of, you know, this is where you could watch the sun set over the sea while you hear your kids splashing in the pool and open a bottle of wine, that specific story about that same feature is something that your audience and the people that you talk to will feel more, and that's what makes it stick. So like being as specific as possible with your stories, even though it might sound backwards, like it's going to be too personal and maybe not resonate with a lot of people, it actually is what makes it resonate with a lot of people. So that's a tip that I think is like useful in any kind of communication.
But who has been like the most interesting company or person you've worked for or with until now? Or is there someone you'd like to work with?
I've really enjoyed working with people in tech and in data in these more technical fields. I recently worked with a senior engineering manager at Microsoft who was invited to give a talk at a conference in Las Vegas to present this new product that her team was working on. And in those kinds of situations, when people are experts in a very specific field, it's often hard for them to not think about what it's like to not know everything that they know. And that's when an outsider perspective is really helpful, because it helps them bring out the stories and talk about data and numbers in a way that people can feel. And that's a challenge that I think a lot of people don't really think is that realistic, because we don't think of data and numbers as something emotional necessarily. So I think the challenge of making those things resonate in a way that people can feel them, not just understand them, is something that I've really, I've really enjoyed doing. So that's like a very recent example that I can think of. But I've worked with such a diverse like range of people from different industries that each one brings something really, really unique. And it's also interesting for me because it expands my perspective to work with someone who's an Olympic medalist who, has trained his whole life to win a medal at the Olympics, but then also someone who's, an engineering manager in Microsoft, or an aerospace engineer, or a real estate agent. There's potential for storytelling having an impact in all of those professions, which is something that I think is like the most interesting thing. So I can still cultivate that curiosity by working with people from such diverse backgrounds in a way that in some other fields maybe would be more limited.
Which one of the TED Talks, well, overall, not the one, maybe only the ones that you've organized, but overall, do you have like a favorite TED Talk of all time?
Yeah, I mean, out of the ones that I've worked on with people, I don't really like picking, because it's like choosing between your babies. Of course, I love them all equally, but everyone has a favorite secretly.
And it's fine.
Yeah.
So we can link it and let the viewers see it as well.
In terms of like TED Talks, The Power of Vulnerability by Brené Brown is probably my favorite TED Talk, because I think the way she incorporates storytelling and humor to talk about something that's actually quite serious, I think is super interesting. So like that level of vulnerability, but also like inspiration and information and practicality is what I would try to achieve with a lot of people that that I work on stories with. And there have been people that I work with personally who I had personally looked up to, so it was kind of a strange dream that I never thought would ever happen, to work with them. When I work with Niall Wilson, who's an Olympic medalist, I had followed his career for quite a few years. And then I got to like work with him and coach him on his talk. And I've always loved the Olympics. It's like my favorite thing. It's very sad that it's only every 4 years. So to work with not just an Olympic athlete, but an Olympic medalist, and to like be able to dive deep into his story and the experience and what it's like, training to achieve something so big, and what it's like, what life is like after you achieved it, was super interesting for me to dive into. So things like that, where it kind of like makes me think like, I can't believe like this is what I do, is like what makes it so fun. This is so relatable to me, because I get to meet so many interesting people through my podcast. It's a similar thing. And I'm super excited that I can connect and then sit down and pick your brain and get to ask all these questions that I wouldn't otherwise. So I'm as lucky as you, but not talking to Olympic medalists yet, but you never know. There's some amazing people in Marbella, and more coming, such as you. So and it doesn't even have to be at work. Just have more conversations with people. ask the barista at Starbucks how their day was,
I'm totally starting to be like
Yeah.
that. I was not that kind of person at all. I was very much introverted. But then I realized like there's so much, like everyone has a story.
Yeah.
And everyone actually likes when you have interest in them and you make their life and I mean their day better. And for sure I don't want to say you get something out of it, but usually it brightens up your mood as well. Like they always like when someone has interest in their day, or or you look great, or you give someone a compliment, and
Yeah,
it just brightens up your day as well.
Yeah, and when people are kind of shy about it, just think about if someone asked you that same question, if you were working at Starbucks or if you were a cleaner or doing, whatever, if someone asked you how your day was, you would probably like that. So why not, have that same positive contribution to
Totally.
someone else or like, anyone.
Yeah, I mean Marbella is very much like that overall. I feel the Spanish
Yeah,
culture is
yeah.
so quite open, and I felt that I was living in Miami for 5 months when I was 21, and that was a bit of a culture shock for me because everyone is like just waiting at the lights and saying, "Hey, how you doing today?" I'm like, "Me? You didn't talk to me. I don't know you." I'm like, "I'm from Estonia. Now we know we're cold people. We don't talk to anyone." But then I'm like, yeah, I'm good. Like, you get used to it. And the same in Marbella, people are much more open, and then you open up. And I see people who have been traveling here, they just start to be more open, and it's beautiful actually that people are connecting more and talking more, especially nowadays with the phone culture of us looking down so much. And in the queues, maybe we used to speak to each other, and now we're in the queues just scrolling.
It's part of why I fell in love with like Spanish culture in general. So like a big reason of why I decided that this might be the next chapter when I decided to move.
Let's talk a little bit about the countries you've lived. So obviously you love Spain now, but what was it like to live in China and in Asia at this young age? Did you like it? Was it a bit scary? How were you perceived? I mean, I guess if you're in a boarding school, you have a lot of international.
Yeah, it was international
students.
school. So I mean, when we moved to Thailand first. Yeah, I was born in Israel. We moved to Thailand when I was 11 or 12, I think, and I didn't speak the language, not Thai, obviously, but even English. And this was an English-speaking school. And you would think it would have been more difficult, and it is for some people. My sister struggled a little more than I did. But for me, even though I had never been to Asia, I had never really traveled that much before then, being 11 or 12. And almost immediately, it just felt like this was the right space for me. Like the international community, people from everywhere. I was surprisingly comfortable even before I could really like communicate with anyone until I learned the language, which thankfully I did rather quickly. So for me, it was amazing, like to be surrounded by all these people. It's given me so much, and I'm so grateful for that experience of growing up in communities like that. So yeah, my experience was great, and it's not the same. Obviously, it can be very difficult for a kid to move somewhere new where they don't know anyone and they don't know the language.
Friends and.
But for me, for some reason, it just felt really kind of comfortable from the beginning, and then obviously when I could actually talk to people and make friends, it just made it even better. But it was really like
Easy.
I wish I had more of a struggle story, but it was really great.
That's good. But also I guess it shows that how welcoming they are. Also I felt when I've traveled to Asia, I think they're quite welcoming,
Yeah, for
they
sure.
don't, it's not a culture that is, making you feel uncomfortable. So but how was the move then to China? Did you feel any difference there with the culture, or did you feel as welcome?
Yeah, I mean, I think at that point, because I had, I was in I was in Thailand for like 3 years before I moved to China in an international boarding school. So I was kind of surrounded by people from everywhere. So by the end of those 3 years, I kind of felt comfortable being in a foreign place, So moving to China wasn't that different. I was sad to move because I actually really loved my school in Thailand and the friends, but the circumstances made it that I had to go finish high school in China. So I was kind of sad to leave, but culturally, yeah, it was a little different than Thailand, the the culture, especially with like the friendliness and the people, is like a little different in the sense they're still really friendly and open, but there's more of a treatment of, if you're not Chinese, if you're, like a white kid, you get treated a little differently than everyone else. Whereas in Thailand, I never really felt like I was that different, weirdly, in the school. So in China, there was a little more of that. It's like highlighted a bit more.
But different, not in a bad way, or
No,
or,
not in a,
or just like you're a little bit outsider.
yeah, not necessarily in a bad way. At all. I would probably like say that I preferred my time in Thailand. I really loved Thailand, but it was also because it was exciting, because it was the first place that I really lived that wasn't where I, was born and grew up. So it just like opened this whole new world that I didn't really know existed before then. So I think part of that made the experience really something that I really kind of cherish and look back on.
But then you moved to Prague, to Europe.
Yeah.
No? And what a difference, I guess, again, culturally, moving to Prague. Or were you already like, kind of, I guess you can't be ready for it, but how was that move? Was it very drastic?
Yeah, I mean, weirdly, I first moved to the UK for my first semester of university, and it was a very international university, but the dorms that I was assigned to, it was a floor of 14 people, and I was actually the only non-British person there.
All right.
Which isn't normally, they normally try to balance it out and make it quite international, but it just happened with me that I was just with British people. So weirdly, where I should have kind of, at least visually fit in more, it was like, oh, like everyone is kind of the same here. This is different. It's not how I spent the last like few years of my life. So it wasn't necessarily a culture shock, but then whenever I would see someone who was different, I would want to like go sit next to them. Like that's where I felt comfortable. And that was it was a smaller campus university, and that was part of why I decided to then like transfer to Prague for the rest of my studies, because I wanted to be in a place that was a little more kind of cosmopolitan, if you will. And Prague was like a bigger city, but not like too big of a city. So that's kind of why I moved there, to have a little more diversity, because to me that's what feels like really comfortable. But yeah, it was good. So then once I moved to Prague, it was kind of like a similar experience to being like in an international school. It was also an international university, with people from different places. So it was the same sort of environment. And again, like I love learning and I love socializing. So like university or school for me was incredible, because that's like the only two things that you really do. So I loved it. I really like look back at my schooling years, both like middle school, high school, university, but really fondly.
But have you always been like this social person, this people person, or were you like really shy?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, I was always really curious, in school. I was never like just into like the art subjects, or just into sports, or just into like math. I always like liked everything, like I would win a push-up competition one day and then a Chinese spelling bee the next day, like two things that you wouldn't really expect the same person in high school to do. That's a real story, actually. And that's kind of what I was. I always like was really curious about all the subjects, all the people. So I think it's the curiosity that makes me really social, because I'm just excited to like meet people and talk to them and see what they do and what their story is. So that's kind of what like drives me to do that. And I think being in boarding school was a big contributor to that, because it would be very difficult to be introverted in boarding school when you're constantly around people. So I think part of that just normalized the like socialization aspect of that. So maybe that has something to do with it. But yeah, I don't really know what makes someone introverted or extroverted. But
I mean, I think it is a personality thing. Like, it's just some people are more are more extroverts, and they love talking to people, love asking questions. And I've always honestly been an introvert, more prefer to be on my own. And if I don't really want to talk to all the neighbors all the time, and I'm a little bit like, that kind
Yeah,
of person. And now I'm just trying to make a little more effort because, of course, I have days when I'm like, no, just leave me alone. I just want to be on my own. But I'm starting to enjoy this little, not even chit chat, but just connecting a little bit more with people because I don't know, just something really fun and nice always comes out of it. And
yeah,
just the feeling is very nice. Like you said, just some little compliment or saying, how's your day? Like it can really change someone's day and it will change your day. It's
yeah.
like the good energy. Like if you give something good
Exactly.
out, you're gonna just like a ripple effect. So I just I've been like kind of pushing myself to change these habits. So
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
think
naturally like that.
yeah, I think that's why people in places like Spain that has more of that community kind of culture like have more smiles on their faces as opposed to maybe some other countries that are on the like the colder side of like we're all in our own kind of bubble, minding our own business,
Yeah.
going through life.
Yeah.
And then you just really like you just don't see as many smiles, which
Yeah.
for me is like has been such a refreshing change moving from more like Central Eastern Europe where the culture, as you know, is a little different than what it's like here. So I think that's part of why what makes Spain so like attractive to me.
Yeah. So what made you move then from Prague to Spain?
Yeah, at the end of 2019, I was in Prague for I think like 7 or 8 years at a time, and I'd already felt it was the longest I've ever lived in one
I was
place
gonna say,
in my life.
what happened?
And because you you get a job, and I was like in the same company for 7 years, or a little less than that. So at the end of 2019, I was already thinking it's time for something new, a new chapter. And at the time, I was actually considering moving back to China. Then 2020 obviously happened, so that plan didn't work out. So I kind of got stuck in Prague, if you will, and like many other people, we closed down the office and started working remotely. So then at the end of 2020 and through like the whole of 2021, almost every month I was traveling somewhere else and staying there for like 2 weeks and working from there. And every time I was somewhere sunny by the beach, I was like, oh, this is nice. I could get used to this. And every time I was in Spain, in different parts of Spain, I just like fell in love with the culture more and more. Then in 2023, my parents moved to Marbella. So I was visiting quite often and I had already made some friends and I just kind of fell in love with the place. So I decided, okay, I guess this is where I should be. This is where I should be. So at the end of 2023, yeah, I gave notice for my flat and for my work in Prague and packed my things and moved here.
Yeah.
So that was 2.5 years ago, something like that.
Yeah, and how interesting that your parents have made such big moves,
Yeah.
Obviously, they're older now, and they still make such a huge move to come to Marbella. What has made them move? Has it been work, or they've just also have this curiosity
No, so
about
yeah,
traveling, or
they were in China for like 20 years before they moved here, and they weren't really planning to move away and retire anytime soon. But because of the COVID situation, their parents were getting older. Most of their kids were living in Europe, and they didn't see anyone for 2 years because of lockdowns and all the restrictions. So they decided to sell their businesses in China and move to Europe. And it was kind of between the south of Italy and the south of Spain because they thought they wanted warmer weather, especially my dad, who doesn't really like the cold. So they settled on south of Spain. So they bought some properties here as investment and they moved here. Now they recently moved to Romania. So now they live in Romania, where my mom is from.
which is insane. Like I love when people are moving like that. It's very hard, I think, to make usually older people leave their homes, leave their place. They get really stuck in it. So it's
Spain I think was a big culture shock for them because they had been in China for so long, which I feel like if any two countries are the exact like polar opposites, it's Spain and China in terms of like everything. How quickly things get done. In China, if you need something done, in 2 hours you'll have it done. Here it takes a little longer sometimes. Also, they were in a big city of like 14 million people. Marbella is obviously like quite small. So I think it was a big culture shock for them. So I don't think they felt like this was home. And then my mom is Romanian. She was born there, but she actually moved away when she was 3. but she was always raised as a very proud Romanian. So then they tried out Romania last summer, and they kind of fell in love with it, and it fit what they were looking for more. So, um, so now they're over there.
At least they're not that far from you. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, everyone is still in Europe, so at least it's much easier to see everyone now.
And they can still come here more often, and maybe they'll get used to this slow life that we have here.
Yeah. Maybe, yeah. I mean, the place they live in Romania is even smaller than Marbella, I would say, probably. But I think for my mom especially, it just like feels like home because she had been away for obviously so many years, since she was 3 years old. So she feels really comfortable there, and happy wife, happy life. So my dad has to feel comfortable there. So they've been having a good time there. So it seems like that's
nice,
where they should be.
Going back to the roots.
Yeah.
And obviously they have been a big influence in your life, I can imagine. But is there anyone else you can think of who has made like a big influence on your life, or some situation that has really shifted your life or changed the way you're thinking about things?
Yeah, I think when I look back, and this is always kind of what I come back to, I didn't realize at the time that was such a big like influence on me, but now when I do when I do workshops, or like when I work on speeches, I always come back to that moment, which was when I was, I think, 14 or 15 in middle school in Thailand. And in history class, I was first introduced to Martin Luther King Jr. and his I Have a Dream speech, and that whole kind of civil rights era in the US, which I had never heard about before that point. And it just resonated with me so much. And even though I think at the time, that speech was given maybe like 40, 50 years before that point, to a community that was obviously not what I should have resonated with in a country that I've still not been to in the US. But I was just so impacted by that speech and those words that I would sit in the library and research about that era, and was just like shocked at what was going on. And when I look back, I think that was the first exposure I had to the power of like really effective, impactful communication, and making someone feel your message in a way that urges them to like act and be part of the solution, even all those years later. And it's those same elements of storytelling, authenticity, connection that Martin Luther King Jr. used in his speech that I try to bring into my own communication or into my training and coaching when I work with people now. And you don't have to be leading a civil rights movement to rely on those things and want to make more of an impact with the way that you speak. So I think that and that speech, and thankfully, Mrs. Fiona, my history teacher at the time, that part of my school like has been an influence that I didn't really know was that powerful until like recent years, when I really started reflecting on it, on like what was the first time I heard a speech and was like so impacted by it, and what elements of that speech made me feel that way, and how can I then bring that into what I do, and helping people do that in their own like lives, whether personally or professionally.
Yeah, but sometimes you don't have to invent the wheel. You can just take something that was impactful, like that talk, and just find the key elements.
Then make it your own, and just want to be like intentional with the way that you communicate or say anything.
So what do you think of Marbella after being here like 2.5-ish years? What is your first impressions?
I think my first impression was probably different than how I feel now. I think, I've not been here for that long. It's been 2.5 years, but when I first moved here, it seemed kind of, quieter. I wasn't really sure where to go to like connect with people. And I think recently there's been such an exciting shift in Marbella being more of a hub for like innovation and business and entrepreneurship in a way that I didn't see when I first moved here. And that shift is something that's like really exciting to like now kind of play an active part in. I've been doing some work recently with the town hall, who like is trying to support more initiatives to kind of reposition Marbella as a hub for that, not just parties or retirement, which were kind of like the two big industries and things to do here. So now there's more kind of, people coming here to, do business and work, even if it's remotely, but to be based here. And it's cool to see that community growing and to see spaces for that community to come together, new co-working spaces that are opening up, run clubs, things like that, that like bring that community together in a way that I don't think was here when I moved here, 2.5 years ago.
Totally.
So it's really exciting to be part of kind of this next chapter in Marbella and to be able to play an active role in it as well.
Yeah. Well, I think COVID really changed that because people saw how much work you could do actually online. And then a lot of companies, I think, gave up some of their offices. So I think not all, but so many of the digital nomads, they have moved down here, even from our country. There's more and more Estonians who have businesses online and they can manage. So it's been a great change for Marbella, and I see it more and more. Many exciting CEOs and entrepreneurs, and they're all moving down here. And I'm super happy about that change because, like you said, it was a little bit of a resort before, and people retired or people who had maybe second or third home. So that means they were wealthier and didn't have to maybe work daily. But there is actually this new community here. Which is exciting.
Yeah, very.
And you're organizing things now already in Marbella.
Yeah, so I like a new venture that I got into with three other partners. We're organizing a 5-day summit/retreat for entrepreneurs. So we're going to bring over 400 entrepreneurs and scale up leaders and speakers from around Europe and the world to Marbella in November for 5 days of keynotes, workshops, curated networking experiences and opportunities. And I think Marbella is like becoming a perfect place for something like that, because especially in November, if you're coming from other places of Europe where the weather is starting to get, not ideal. So to come here and connect with like-minded people and be inspired and get the tools to like take your business to the next level and build that community, I think will be really, really exciting. So that's something we started working on like earlier in the year, and we're kind of in the midst of just about starting to really like full scale organize it. So I'm really excited for that. Yeah,
I will definitely share it with my viewers whenever you have the details. So
very soon, maybe later this week even. But let's see. Yeah,
if there's no power cuts.
I know.
All had a.
But the town hall, like Marbella town hall, has been really supportive. They really like seeing things like that happen here, so they're like helping out as well. So it's nice to see the, kind of government side of things want to see things like this happening here and see Marbella become something a little different than maybe it used to be. So it's I'm really excited about it.
And what about a TED Talk in Marbella?
Yeah, I would like to see. There was an event a few years ago. I'm not sure why it's not happening anymore. So maybe, maybe in the future we'll see it come back. So this year I'm a little bit busy, but who knows what's going to happen in the future. But I think it's a great place to do something like that.
I think that would be like brilliant for Marbella.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, it's moving in another way, so that would make it. That would be a great.
And there is interest. A lot of people have been asking me about that, so I guess people want to see it happen.
And what are your favorite places in Marbella? Obviously, like you said, you're going to maybe these co-working offices and the run clubs, but can you point out any of your favorite places where you like to go?
Yeah.
And don't name them all, because I always ask my guests to save some, so I put them on my blog. So you have to visit my blog.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I won't mention too many specific places. I mean, one which sounds kind of weird, but I work at the Pool Marbella, which is this co-working space, and I love it. I love being there. There's such a great community of people there. I spend most of my day and week there. It's in the center of Marbella. The Golden Mile is just 5 minutes away. So I really actually enjoy being there and working there. And then the rest of the time, I kind of just like being outside. So I like to just like take long walks on on the beach in the Golden Mile when I can put a good podcast on, like Marbella Life, for example,
Yeah, I wish.
or some music, and just kind of be outside. It's so nice to live in a place where you can spend so much time outside throughout the year. So that's kind of where I spend when I'm not working. I try to spend as much time as I can just outside, even if it's just like walking around.
So you don't have any secret coffee places or favorite tapa places?
There's so many good ones. Yeah, I mean, I don't.
You can't think
I
of
don't
them.
know. Yeah, I'll think of it. I'll think of it in
you'll
more
stand
detail,
out.
and then we'll share it
Yeah,
with
because
we'll share
I
it in the
always
vlog.
get so many amazing suggestions from my guests that because there's so many places to go.
Yeah,
Obviously, I
that's why
haven't
it's hard to
been.
pick.
Yeah, and I've kept the list where I still have to go. So there's so many amazing places in the old town, and
I have I have a map saved on Google Maps with all my favorite places, and there's like close to 200 places on that
Wow.
on that map in
God.
such a small place.
Yeah.
So it's hard to pick because there are so many great places, and things open up like very often, and then there's like you have a new coffee place that you like that not necessarily replace the old one, but now you go there, and then another one opens, so you go there. So there's just so many, but I'll think of it in more detail so we can share it.
Yeah, and now you're in Forum for the first time because you've never been here. And I mean, you just tried the matcha, but the coffee club here, I think it's one of the best coffee places in Marbella. Honestly, the coffee is so good. They have the quality milk, So I'm so happy that they have this amazing coffee here.
Yeah,
For me, coffee is so important. Not that I have 5 coffees, but a day I have the decaf as well. But they just make it so good. It's sometimes hard to find really, really, really
I've
good
heard
coffee.
that. Yeah, I don't drink coffee too much. And when I do, I'm not really that picky because I don't know anything about coffee because it's kind of a recent thing that I started drinking. But I hear from people that come here that it's not that easy to find great coffee.
Yeah.
But I think now there's like some more like great places that put more attention into the
Because
details.
the Spanish coffee, I mean, everyone's coffee tastes are different. The Spanish coffee, I guess, is fine, but for me, it's a little bit too strong. I like a little bit more latte side, so I have to tell them sombra, which is a bit more, but it's still not kind of the way I like it. So the way I like it is in Coffee Club. That's like my absolute favorite. Sometimes I even drive here just to get coffee.
I mean, we all need that one
Yeah.
place that gives us comfort.
Yeah, I love it. And yeah, I don't know any other places you love in Marbella. So you don't go to the gym, you just go run in the beach?
No, I mean I go to the gym every morning. So I live in Nueva Andalucia, so like very close around the corner from Real Club Padel. So that's where I go. So I go every morning before I go to work.
Yeah, which has a very cool outdoor gym.
Exactly, which is part of why I love it because you're still outdoors even when you go to the gym. So
and the paddle courts.
Yeah, and you can do it again like all year round. So it's part of why I love that gym specifically. So I spend every morning over there before I head to work, and then the rest is just exploring and kind of taking suggestions from people because everyone has their own little favorite place and there's kind of little areas.
You have to check my blog from all the guest
for sure,
favorites because really there's like. Everyone usually has 10 or even sometimes 20 suggestions. It's like Rob had an amazing list. And I'm always like, wow, I need to try that, And then there's new places. So you never run out of great places to visit in Marbella. Sure. So that's the cool thing here. So where do you see yourself going then in, let's say, I don't know if you think ahead of a 5 or a 10-year plan?
Yeah, I tend to not, I've never been a too much of a long-term planning kind of thing because not having a plan has kind of worked out for me quite well. When I started my TEDx event, I really didn't think I didn't even know if I would do it the second year because it was my last year of university in Prague, and then I moved to Vienna and now I live here, but I still do it. And now it's gone from 80 people to 600 people, and that's not something I had planned. It just kind of happened. It was like a dream I never knew I had. And I decided to move to Marbella within a period of 3 months. So there wasn't too much planning involved in that. So I kind of like being lost in the right direction. So not just lost, but feel like I'm heading towards something and let kind of life guide me to where I should be and what I should be doing. So that's kind of the approach I've taken. So I don't see myself leaving in the short run. But like who knows what's going to happen.
If you get a
But
very good opportunity in America, God
yeah,
knows.
but I'm very it's like the first place in a while that I lived because I love traveling and I travel quite a lot. And it used to be that whenever I would travel, I would kind of dread going back home. I'd be like, oh, I wish I could stay one more week. And now it's kind of the first place where I feel like the other way. Sometimes I like travel and I love where I am, but I'm like, oh, I can't wait to go back home to Marbella. So I think that's like a good sign that like maybe this is the place for a long time. When I moved to Prague, I thought I was only going to be there for 3 years of university, and I ended up staying like almost 10 years. So yeah, so I don't make too many plans. I just want to keep kind of enjoying life and where I am and the people that I have in it, and as long as those aspects stay the same, then whatever I do and wherever I am, will follow, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good plan,
Yeah.
a non-plan. Because sometimes you make plans and then you can say you make a plan, but God eventually anyway moves you to another direction. So it's not too
Yeah,
good
and
not
I
to
heard a
stay
quote
stuck.
recently in a TED talk that says the surest way to fail in life is to make a goal, because if you make a goal, you're either going to fail at achieving it, and then when you achieve it, then what happens? So I think it's just like having intentions and objectives is like a new thing I've been trialing in the last couple of years of like, not I want to read 12 books this year, but I want to like have a healthier relationship with books, and then you can define it in like different ways. So I just want to have like great people in my life. I want to love what I do professionally. So all the specifics will kind of fall into place as long as I like use that as my compass. So that's kind of like where I am.
The new goal setting
Yeah,
trend.
yeah,
I had
yeah.
no idea that it's like that now, guys.
Yeah.
I'm quite goal oriented, but also not that fixated with the goal.
Yeah.
Of course, it's like good to have some kind of rules and discipline, but also I think also if something falls apart or is not going that way, I think it's also sometimes a sign that okay, maybe we need to adjust. But sometimes I also feel like the hardships are like a little test.
Of course, yeah, yeah.
Like you can't also give up that there's hard things on your way now. Like, okay, let's find another solution. But of course, sometimes I do feel like life is a little bit pushing us. Like, let's go now this way. So, okay, let's just try this way as well and see what happens.
I think like if you're chasing something, like one thing very specifically, then like that's where like all your focus goes. But then like once you achieve that, what happens next? And like again, when I work with an Olympic medalist, it was like a really interesting conversation of like what is life after winning a medal, and not much has like really changed, which made it really challenging because he had worked his whole life for that one specific moment, and that's what defines success for him, rather than like happiness and like doing what you love. So then when he achieved that, it was like, okay, so like what now? He was 19, I think, when he won that medal. So like,
so young,
what do you do with the rest of your life if you've achieved the only thing you ever wanted to achieve? So he had to like redefine what success meant like for him, as part of like his like mental health journey. So I think kind of I learned from that to not like define success in something that's so specific. Because if that's like a final destination, then once you get there, like where else do you go? Like what really keeps driving you? Because life is like a road trip that like keeps on going. So it's great to have destinations on the way, but not like one final one that like defines where you're going. Because if you achieve that, then what? So I try to be more flexible with the way, and for someone who's quite practical and used to set like 10 resolutions at the beginning of the year, it's it's a journey, but I feel like it's working so far.
But at least you're like aware of it. I think awareness is always like the key to know. I know it's true, like you say, when we place our happiness outside to one medal, one thing, if they take that away, what happens with happiness?
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
True. I'm trying to also just enjoy every day and every moment, because that's all we have in the end, you know?
Yeah.
We had this huge power cut yesterday, and that really, again, I think like COVID just really brings people back to this moment to appreciate what we have right now, right here. We don't have the medal, we don't have the, all these things. So we really have to learn how to carpe diem, they say.
Exactly.
Enjoy the moment. It's hard to do, but I think this is the best lesson to just keep in mind, enjoy the sun, enjoy the coffee.
Yeah, for sure. And if those things are like what really makes you happy, or if not necessarily if that's what makes you happy, but if you can find happiness in those things, then a power cut isn't going to change that, you know. If I was in a big city and there was a power cut, then I probably wouldn't really know what to do. But here, because I've learned that, you know, being outside like gives me joy and energy, then when someone asked me, oh, what are you going to do now that the power is out? I was just like, I guess I'll go to the beach, you know, like.
We don't need electricity. We have the sun.
So I just went for a long walk and then, you know, read a book on my terrace and waited for the power to come back on. So it didn't like stop my life, essentially. So yeah, it's just about like being able to find joy in the little things, I guess.
That's what they say. Enjoy the little things. Smell the flowers. Enjoy this beautiful shop. Yeah, that's what we all have to try to do more. That's why I guess people also meditate, just to bring themselves back to this very moment, because that's why they call it the present.
Yeah, gift, exactly. You know? Like you have to be grounded, and it's something I work on with speakers all the time. Like anxiety always lives in the past or in the future. You're either worrying about something that happened or worrying about something that might happen in the future. So if you can learn to be like really grounded in the present, you'll have so much more confidence, and you'll be able to like minimize the anxiety because you're not worrying about something that happened or something that's like going to happen. So that's a lot of like when I coach people on confidence, like being present is something that we work on quite a lot, because I've seen how helpful it's been for so many people.
Totally. Yeah. Nice. Thank you for your kind this advice and a great conversation. It's been a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to touch on? Something that we didn't talk about? Any recommendations? What book are you reading right now? Because you said you were reading a book yesterday, if I can ask you.
I just finished The Creative Act. I think it's called The Creative Act, A Way of Being, which was written by a big, I forget the name, but a big like record producer in the US. Which is how to like nurture creativity. And as I said, I'm not naturally a very creative person. And he talks about, you know, how it's like really in the small things. So that's a book that I would definitely recommend to people. It's become very popular in the last year. It was recommended to me by quite a few people, and my friend like gifted it to me. So that's a book I literally just finished a few days ago, and I loved it. So The Creative Act, A Way of Being, I think is what it's called. Right. I don't remember the author, sadly.
It's all right. We're going to find out and put it also in my blog. Because I love getting the restaurant and the local place recommendations, but I think I should also start getting book recommendations, because you get always very good recommendations from the guests. So it's a great book. And try to read it as well.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you again for your time, for coming to Marbella, for enriching our business scene with your skill set. So.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to be part of it. I think the shift in Marbella is really exciting, and it's really cool to be in a community that's like growing in kind of a different direction and to be active in it. So yeah, thank you so much for having me and for highlighting stories of people in Marbella, because I think there's so much and so many people that we don't necessarily know of. So things like this also connect people. So it's cool to be part of it.
Thank you. Because even me, I know so many people I know, but how well do I actually know? And I don't know their stories. So through this, I really get to know people's stories, motivates them with, so it's incredible, really. Everyone has a story.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm really happy you shared yours, and I look forward to seeing what you're going to do next in Marbella.
Awesome. Yeah, me too.
Right.
I mean, who knows what's going to happen?
Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah.
The future is bright.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you again.
Thank you.
And please don't forget to subscribe and like my channel so we can grow even bigger and better, and let's see what the future brings. So thank you, and see you soon. This episode is brought to you by Sandon, a family-run furniture company with a brand new flagship store in Forum Marbella.